The 2025 Austrian MotoGP was once again full of drama, held at the Red Bull Ring. The race featured a fierce duel between top riders and ignited the emotions of one of the sport's greatest legends. Valentino Rossi, the MotoGP icon and owner of the VR46 Academy, was disappointed to see his two best students, Francesco Bagnaia and Marco Bezzecchi, outperformed by his eternal rival, Marc Márquez, who ultimately won the race. Does this mean that the new VR46 generation will be unable to overcome Márquez's dominance? Let's discuss. Rossi had high expectations from the qualifying session. Bezzecchi performed brilliantly, taking pole position, while Bagnaia secured third place on the grid. Having the two Ducati riders he had trained on the front row made Rossi believe that this was the perfect opportunity for his students to triumph on Austrian soil, a circuit known for its Ducati-friendly nature. However, that optimistic scenario was shattered as soon as the starting lights went out. Marc Márquez surged from fourth place to the front immediately. With his instincts as a true fighter, he kept Bagnaia close from the start, setting the stage for an inevitable duel. Bagnaia and Márquez engaged in a fierce battle. They overtook each other, pressured each other, and pushed their bikes to their limits. Márquez's constant mental pressure caused Bagnaia to lose his composure. Márquez eventually managed to overtake the reigning world champion and secure a second place. Up ahead, Bezzecchi appeared comfortable. With a consistent rhythm, he maintained a safe distance and appeared on course for victory. The crowd began to believe that the top step of the podium was within reach for Rossi's disciple. However, experience speaks for itself. For Marc Márquez, a true race begins when his opponent feels secure. Lap after lap, he closed the gap with incredible precision. By the final 8 laps, Márquez was right behind Bezzecchi. The pressure was on. Bezzecchi tried to close the racing line, but Márquez played with the tempo as if waiting for the perfect moment to pounce. Sure enough, he executed a clean and swift maneuver. Without leaving any room for a response, Márquez took first place. From then on, he was unstoppable. Bezzecchi lost focus and had to give up second place to Fermín Aldeguer. The final result? Márquez won, Aldeguer finished second, and Bezzecchi finished third. Meanwhile, Bagnaia struggled even more and fell out of contention for the podium. Valentino Rossi, watching from behind the team garage, seemed unable to hide his emotions. His usually charismatic and smiling demeanor was replaced by a grim expression, reflecting deep disappointment. With each passing lap, his anger seemed to grow. Rossi was well aware of the significance of that moment, not just a defeat on the track, but also the reopening of an emotional wound. For Rossi, this race was a deeply personal blow. His eternal rival, Marc Márquez, had humiliated him once. Again, this time, however, it wasn't Rossi himself who was defeated, but rather the students from the VR46 Academy, whom he had dedicatedly mentored for years. Marco Bezzecchi and Francesco Bagnaia, two men Rossi believed could carry on Italy's MotoGP legacy, were forced to surrender to Márquez's strategy and skill. Márquez's talent had been a stumbling block for Rossi throughout his career. "Really disappointed," said Rossi, his voice trembling as he fought back his emotions. Pecco and Bees were in the right position to win. They had the speed and a competitive bike, but in the end, they couldn't stop Marc. "I knew he was strong, but it still hurts because they were the two riders I thought could compete with him." Rossi's irritation deepened as he added that Márquez's victory in front of his students was a bitter insult. For the legend, it wasn't just about the race result. It was also a battle for prestige and legacy. He founded the VR46 Academy to develop a new generation of Italian riders who could continue his dominance and serve as the last line of defense against his Spanish rival. However, the outcome in Austria showed that this mission was far from successful. At that moment, the camera capturing Rossi's face in the garage showed a man who had lost more than just a race. He seemed to be at the mercy of fate. The shadow of his old rivalry with Márquez resurfaced and haunted him in an even more painful way, because this time it wasn't Rossi who had fallen, but rather the students he had so proudly championed in front of the world. The rivalry between Valentino Rossi and Marc Márquez will always be remembered as one of the most bitter and dramatic in MotoGP history. Since their controversial incident in the 2015 season, their relationship has never recovered. The wounds have scarred not only on the track, but also throughout the sport's long history. Rossi, now retired and serving primarily as a mentor through the VR46 Academy, still seems haunted by Márquez's shadow. This time, however, he was not the victim on the track. Rather, it was the students he had dedicatedly nurtured from a young age, Marco Bezzecchi and Luca Marini. That moment at the Austrian MotoGP brought back those bitter memories. Márquez played with a cool and calculating strategy, as if he were deliberately controlling the pace of the race to put pressure on his opponent. For Bezzecchi and Marini, the race felt like a duel against someone who was not only aiming for victory but also trying to demonstrate psychological superiority. Meanwhile, from the VR46 paddock, Rossi experienced a rehashing of old wounds-bitter déjà vus. He watched his students experience the same frustrations he once did. The Austrian race marked not only Márquez's sixth consecutive victory, but also the reignition of the old rivalry amid emotional drama. It was as if the controversial 2015 story had never truly ended. Only the main character had changed from Rossi to the new VR46 generation. Meanwhile, Márquez's victory in Austria also shook Ducati internally. Gigi Dall'Igna, the general manager of Ducati course, couldn't hide his mixed emotions. He expressed admiration but also deep surprise. What Marc had done was extraordinary. 6 consecutive wins are no easy feat, especially in this era of intense competition. I can hardly believe his consistency and the way he controls races. Marc leaves his opponents at a loss even before the finish line, said Dall'Igna. His tone filled with admiration and amazement. His words seemed to illustrate Ducati's major dilemma. They had the fastest bike on the grid, yet it was Márquez who managed to turn that technical superiority into psychological dominance. Rivals who tried to fight back appeared mentally defeated, and Rossi's disciples, who should have been confident, became entangled in the 8-time world champion's cunning game. Márquez's victory in Austria cemented his status not just as a fast rider, but as a strategic maestro who understands every detail of the game. He can pressure his opponents with not only speed, but also mental strength. In a world where fractions of a second can decide the outcome, Márquez knows exactly when to hold back, when to attack, and how to trap his opponents. Márquez's 6 consecutive wins in the 2025 season are not just statistics. They symbolize his rise to a new level of dominance. After being doubted due to injury and difficulties with Honda, he has proven that he is back and more dangerous than ever. His dominance has shaken the MotoGP paddock. His rivals are losing confidence, and even the big teams must acknowledge his absolute superiority. The 2025 Austrian MotoGP will be remembered not only for Márquez's victory, but also as a new chapter in his rivalry with Rossi. Rossi's old wounds have been reopened, this time through the suffering of his students. The world wonders, can anyone stop Márquez on his path to absolute supremacy? Will Rossi find a way to inspire his protégés to defeat Márquez? Leave your thoughts below.